Okay, let's bring him in now. Morley, thanks for joining us from Edmonton. He is the voice of the Edmonton Eskimos, no stranger to Mike Kelly. So, Morley, you got to follow that up, that act there with Coach Kelly. How you doing, man?
To follow, man. Thanks for that.
Well, and you're a talker, too. Well, we like to have talkers on this show. What did you think when you saw Cuthbert leaving TSN to Sportsnet? What was your first thought?
Shock. My first thought is good for him, because I know he loves the CFL. He loves hockey. He's an iconic voice in Canada as far as broadcasting goes. Great for him, because it's clearly what he wants to do. But my first thought was, man, it's a bad day for football. It's a bad day for football, because he is, for thousands and thousands of Canadians, the voice of the Canadian Football League. He's the guy who brought us all those great cups, who brings us those Friday night games, those Saturday night games, whatever the case may be. I'm going to really miss seeing him along the trail during the CFL season, because there's not a better guy to talk to. There's not a better guy to share ideas with. There's not a better guy to get, to get ideas from. I know he's a guy who, when I was up for the Eskimo job coming up 11 years ago, I know he said some good things to the right people about me, and I'll always be thankful for that. And I'm going to miss him around the Canadian Football League. That was what hit me first. Happy for him, obviously, but man, it's a bad day for football.
Well, and a major CFL backer, by the way. I mean, TSN takes a lot of flack for not promoting the CFL enough per se versus the NHL, Raptors, or even NFL, but that's not fair. The guys at TSN love the CFL, and Chris Cuthbert leads the way on that. So you're right. Anything on that? More on that before we switch gears to actual CFL talk?
No, I'm going to be happy when hockey comes back to see Chris Cuthbert doing games on Saturday night. That's going to be fantastic. Right. There's a flip side to this that's good for the sports fan too, right? It's not just, we're not just talking about the football. If we switch it to the hockey side of things, it's going to be great to see him doing Hockey Night in Canada again, because again, an iconic voice. He's called so many big hockey games, and of course, you go back to the Vancouver Olympics and the Golden Goal, and all those great playoff games he's broadcast. It's going to be great to see him on a regular basis. It was always cool when we got those MSNBC games and it was him doing games. And I thought, it's cool. We get to listen to Chris do hockey tonight, which is something we haven't been able to do on a regular basis. And now we will. So there's the bright side.
Amazing, too. I was watching the classic game of the 94 Stanley Cup, Game 7, Canucks at Rangers. He's calling it on CBC. So he's literally the soundtrack for a generation in this country. Yes. Before I do get to the CFL talk and how it relates to the Eskimos, Morley, you're still working, I see, right? You're doing your sports updates and stuff like that. How are you filling time on 6:30, Chad? You
know what? I'm actually surprised, because today was my 49th day doing morning sports from my home office here in South Edmonton. There's been no scores, Rod, but there's been no shortage of stories. There's been some great stories to talk about. We've kind of changed our MO a little bit, and we've gone in depth with a little more personality. We've played some longer clips, and we obviously haven't had scores to talk about, but that doesn't mean the sports news isn't out there. That doesn't mean there's not things to talk about. I mean, I have only you've got 2 hours to fill every day. That's a lot tougher than my 3 minutes every half hour from 5:30 in the morning to 9 o'clock in the morning. So it's a little tougher, but it surprised me a bit. There's been no shortage of things. I've never sat at my computer wondering, I got another minute to fill here. How am I going to do it? It's always been, to a lot of extent, I got to cut this out. I got to cut that out. I got to make this clip shorter. So it's been okay. I miss people though. I never thought I'd say that, but I miss people. I miss seeing people at work. I miss, we have, there's two hosts of our morning show. One of them is at the studio still working. He's there, and Shay Gannam and Chelsea Bird is at her home working. We don't see each other. I haven't seen them for coming up on 3 months now. I don't see anyone other than when we do a Zoom call once in a while, but that's about it. I do miss people. I can't wait for it to get back to normal. I don't know when that's going to be, but I'm certainly looking forward to it.
I bet, as are Eskimos fans, with you being the voice of the Edmonton Eskimos. You can imagine how it's going over here in Saskatchewan, where we don't have an NHL team to be glum about. Like, I swear, Morley, once the training camp was paused, once that started, that's when it hit home for people here. You've been going through it since the Oilers, were paused after that loss to the Jets on home ice. But with the Eskimos, with Scott Milanovich there, we've had Trevor Harris on the air. Major optimism in Edmonton, right, with the green and gold this year.
Has to be, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think that GM Brock Sunderland's gone out and he's addressed a few of the shortcomings of the team over the off season, which turned out to be obviously a lot longer than anybody wants it to be. But yeah, I'm excited. You can never tell how a CFL team's going to be. You know the players who were in the CFL last year or years before that have joined the team, but there's so many guys who you really honestly don't know who they are or where they come from. And they step in and they make an impact right away. And you think, just off the top of my head from Eskimos in the past 10 years, you think of guys like J.C. Sherritt and Dexter McCoyle and guys who show up and you don't really know who they are or know what to expect from them. They end up becoming big stars in this league. And in J.C. Sherritt's case, a longtime member and one of the most popular players ever in Eskimo colors. So, I think that's where it swings for a lot of teams, what kind of players that the GMs and their scouting staffs can find that are those impact players that we don't know about, and as far as what we do know about, the Eskimos, I think, have made some good additions to their club this year. Scott Milanovich, I like Jason Maas. I think that he's a brilliant offensive mind, and I think he does great things as an offensive coordinator. But it was pretty clear to me anyway that it was time for a change in Edmonton, and that Jason Maas is a good coach. I want to say that first and foremost. But a change is sometimes as good as a rest, as they say. And I think Scott Milanovich has really breathed some new life into everybody as far as the Eskimos go, especially offensively. And when you break it down, I think Milanovich was almost the only guy the Eskimos could hire to replace Maas that would keep Trevor Harris happy, because Harris knows Milanovich. He has worked with him before, and he was very fond of him. And I know Harris was a backer of Jason Maas. He talked openly about how he wanted Maas to return and how he enjoyed working with Jason Maas. So having Scott Milanovich come in kind of soothes that a little bit, and there's a lot of excitement ahead, I think, for the Eskimos. Every player I have talked to since the announcement is excited to work for Scott Milanovich.
Well, I'll tell you what, another kick to the shins is the fact that it was supposed to be Friday Night Football, Winnipeg at Saskatchewan tonight, and then Calgary at BC. So it would have been Jason Maas's first game as offensive coordinator at home for the fans to see him on the SaskTel Maxtron and stuff, calling plays from probably upstairs. So let me ask you this on behalf of the Rider Nation. What are the Riders getting in Jason Maas? Was he unfairly maligned in Edmonton as head coach, or was he miscast in the role? Will he be a better offensive coordinator than head coach?
He's a great offensive coordinator. I don't think there's any doubt about that in my mind. I think his two best years were the years where he was an offensive coordinator with the Eskimos. He still called plays last year, I believe, with Jordan Maksimic. But he's a guy who gets involved in everything, and he's so passionate about everything, and he wants to know about everything. And I think when he had the opportunity to step away from the OC role and just be a head coach, he was much better on the sidelines. I think he was miscast a little bit because of his, I don't know what we call them, his sideline antics. I think that he became good TV, too good TV, and I think he was on too much. And I think TSN was waiting for him and put him on. And I think every time he did something out of the ordinary, it was obviously on TV, and I think that hurt his reputation. It's not fair, but that's the way it shook down. So he's a good offensive coordinator. I don't think there's any doubt about that, and I think the offensive players on the Saskatchewan Roughriders, if they haven't already, have through their meetings and talking with him, will learn that just how creative he is, just how much of a great football mind he is, and just how much his passion affects your passion. I mean, we'd sit with him before every game in our booth, to do our pregame interview, but we'd talk a lot. And I mean, every time we had those conversations, his passion would bubble over, and he would get excited about the game, and he would get us excited about the game. And, we still have 24 hours to wait, but you want not only just to broadcast the game right now, you thought you could go play it right now. He's just that kind of a passionate person.
Well, I'm smiling, Morley, because remember that day you and Dave Campbell had Chris Jones in there doing the same thing with Jones, and I came and burst into your booth, kind of like Kramer into Jerry Seinfeld's apartment, and I got right in the middle of your interview with Jones, and he gave me this look like I was a speck of dirt on the bottom of his shoe, and I'm like, that's Don Matthews. I know that look. do you
he learned at the foot of Don Matthews. There's no doubt about that. In those conversations that we had, and that was our time, Rod. That's why he gave you that look, right? So, he often in those talks talked about Don Matthews and what an impact he was on him, and he often talked about Don Matthews and Bill Parcells. It was kind of cool when we'd ask Chris Jones a question, and he'd say, "Well, you know what? I called Coach Parcells this week to ask him about that. Here's what he told me. And those are two guys cut from the same cloth, and Chris Jones is cut from that cloth as well. So, yeah, you're right there. Don Matthews for sure.
So further down that Maas line, of any snaps that James Franklin took with the Eskimos, you called them. So what have the Riders signed there? The Eskimos' James Franklin, who won games in Mike Riley's absence, or the Argos' James Franklin that struggle to move the ball and find receivers?
I think that depends on James Franklin and his frame of mind and how he goes. And I hope he can clear his mind and just forget about everything and just really wrap himself around a fresh start, because that's what he's going to get. I think James Franklin is an extremely talented quarterback. And every time he stepped in, he did well, save for a Labor Day game in Calgary where, I think maybe the bright lights got to him. I think that was his rookie season, too. I think maybe the bright lights got to him a little bit in that one. But, I mean, he's a smart kid. He's a passionate kid. He's the politest guy you'll ever interview. Yes, sir. No, sir, to every answer, it seemed. And I think with Jason Maas working with him, he'll be able to recapture or capture what he had in the past. And I think he's more than a capable backup. I was kind of hoping that the Eskimos may be able to bring him back as a free agent and get him as a backup and trying to get him back on track to where he was here. But he's found a home in Saskatchewan about 3 or 4 years later, after most Saskatchewan fans thought he would find a home in Saskatchewan. But he found a home in Saskatchewan, and I think working with Jason Maas will do wonders for James Franklin again.
Well, when they say be careful what you wish for, Rider fans do now have him, as you say, 4 years after, when they thought they were getting him. So we'll see how it goes. Morley, we will let you run. I'm enjoying following what you do. Glad to see you stay safe out there. And Grandpa Morley, right? I mean, that's pretty exciting, too.
Yeah. Little Milo was born 3 months ago. I haven't held him since the first week of his life because of the world we live in right now. And Grandpa is mostly just on FaceTime and from 6 feet away. But we're looking forward to getting to know Milo a little bit better as this thing comes to an end, hopefully very soon.
Lots of catching up to do when you do. Morley, thanks for the time, my friend. Keep in touch.
All right, Rod. Thank you very much. Stay safe, everybody.
The voice of the Edmonton Eskimos, Morley Scott.
You're watching Rod Pedersen on demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.